So I've also enabled a Q&A section in here. So if you don't want to speak up to ask any questions during the presentation, you can type your question in the Q&A tab and it will show up and we will answer it at whenever the time is appropriate, I suppose. So with that, Ray, if you want to take it away, we can get started.
Awesome. Thanks, Lyle. So thank you guys for coming here today. My name is Ray Westerson. I am the Southwest Alberta Territory Manager for Nufarm. And Jason, if you want to come on camera. So there, you guys can see him. Jason's the Southeast Alberta Territory Manager. We're going to be co-presenting this today. But if you have any questions, we'll kind of try and tag team looking at the chat and presenting through this. So thank you guys very much for coming here today. Just informal line of where we split the territory is essentially like that Highway 36 corridor. So Jason, based out of Brooks, Alberta, covers east, and myself, I am based out of south of Calgary, and I cover the west side. All right. So if you guys don't already know, you guys are here today to learn about Oxbow. Hopefully that's what the invitation said, and that's why you're here. You're really excited about that. But before we talk about Oxbow, I'm going to talk a little bit about kochia. Kochia is the bane of our existence here in Southwest Alberta. Looking at the herbicide-resistant kochia survey done by Dr. Geddes, if you look at 2012 here, these red dots are the indication of where susceptible and resistant kochia has turned up. So you see that in 2012, we had some resistant kochia in the Vulcan County down through Warner. And kochia overall, that was rated as susceptible, did not go much farther north than essentially Calgary. Going over into 2021 here, you see that the dots of susceptible and resistant kochia are pretty widespread throughout southern Alberta. Not only does it cover more counties, more territories, but it's actually going progressively farther north, and it's actually up to Pinoca now. And it's also been confirmed that susceptible and resistant kochia has been confirmed found in Grand Prairie. So it is a province-wide feed right now. And generally speaking, since the 2021 survey results, 100% of kochia is assumed group 2 resistance. 78% of kochia is glyphosate resistance, 28% is dicamba resistance, and 44% is phylloxera resistant. So what does that mean? Well, if we break it down, we start looking at glyphosate resistance. And I'm going to focus because Lyle invited me, I'm going to just kind of focus on the Lethbridge County here today. If you're in neighboring counties, then you can look at this map and kind of see how you rate or how your farm rates. But generally, glyphosate resistance in the Lethbridge County is about that 60 to 70%. So what does that mean? Does that mean that glyphosate won't work at all? No, that's not true. However, if you're just relying solely on glyphosate to control kochia, then we're not going to be getting the results that we want. At best, at times, we could see, pretty okay responses, and at worst, based on Lethbridge County, we're going to see about 60 to 70% resistant. So this is going to be really important if you are rotating out of any glyphosate Roundup Ready crops such as canola, sugar beets, etc., corn. And if you're going into your pre-burn and your post-harvest applications using only glyphosate, I know that doesn't really happen much these days, but if you are doing that add-in of another partner, another mode of action, it's going to be just as important. Dicamba resistance. So dicamba resistance for Lethbridge County showing up here around essentially 7% or 70% resistant. So what does that mean? Quite a bit of pulses growing in here. So people relying more on a Banville or a dicamba as a burn-off product or an in-crop product. So if you're using this in your rotation, making sure that you're not using dicamba in crop and you're rotating out of these groups is definitely going to be more important. And then this one, the bad boy, phylloxera resistance. So this one is the #1 concern. So we look at phylloxera resistance. Phylloxera resistance for Lethbridge is showing up around that 60 to 70% resistance to phylloxera. This is a pretty big concern here. And I'm going to talk about why in a few slides. Now, if we look at overall cereal herbicide brands that are used in Western Canada, if we're looking at just the brown soil zone, this is the ag data that was collected. And the #1 product through #8, you can see is listed there under product name. And the ranking is as far as acres. So the product name that covers the most acres, you can see Enforcer, combination of Enforcer D and M coming in at #2. But overall, if you look at this list, I think most guys would agree that this is a pretty average list of chemistries that you use on your farm. Maybe there's some newer products that are not listed. Maybe you've stopped using a few of these brands, but I think overall this is a fairly accurate representation. If it's not, feel free to type in the Q&A section there. But if we look at this list here, if we know that we have phylloxera resistant kochia, if we have kochia that is developing tolerance to MCPA 240, we know that we have complete group 2 resistant to kochia, including fluoroethylene, and that we're also seeing dicamba resistance starting as well as glyphosate resistance. So if we take out those brands, those active ingredients, we're over relying on a couple active ingredients here in the brown soil zone. So taking out those actives that no longer have activity on kochia, we're looking at just predominantly 2 active ingredients doing the heavy load, bromoxynol and haloxypin. This gets to be a bit of a concern because bromoxynol, although a great contact product, seems to lose efficacy on kochia as kochia continues to grow. And also because it's a contact product, we really have to make sure we're nailing that water volume. And same goes for haloxypin. So that brings us to where we are today and why we are introducing the Duplazan technology. So Duplazan technology, for those of you that have been around a while, you may remember this molecule that was actively named dichloroprop. It was actually previously registered in a brand called Estaprop almost 3 decades ago. So this is an older technology that has been rediscovered. A fun fact that Canada was actually the only country that had dichloroprop registered as an active ingredient. And since we've rediscovered this chemistry, we've actually had to redo everything when it comes to this chemistry, including formulation, tank mixability, safety, etc. Now, what's most interesting about Duplazan technology, it's a unique group 4 herbicide that's actually controlling other group 4 resistant weeds. And this not only goes for kochia, but there's actually 8 weeds around the world that are resistant to group 4 technology that Duplazan is having activity on. I'll talk about that in the next slide. Overall, in Western Canada, we've done 450 trials on this, and we're really excited to see the results and to launch it to you guys today. So the first product in the Powered by Duplazan portfolio here is Oxbow. So this is Oxbow herbicide. It's a combination of Duplazan and bromoxynol. You can use it on your spring wheat, winter wheat, durum, and barley. Pretty wide window of application, 3 leaf until just prior to flag. The rate range is the standard rate of 485 milliliters per acre. You do have the flexibility to go up to the high rate. And I will talk about where I use that high rate and when the standard rate is sufficient. For about 90% of the cases, that standard rate, which is 40 acres per case, 240 acres a drum, and 960 acres per tote, is what you're going to be needing. Because this product is not a contact, it's a systemic. Your water volume is anywhere from 5 to 10 gallons per acre. We do like the higher side of 10 gallons. I know every chem company says that, but you can go to 5 to 7.5 as well. And there is no recropping restrictions the year after an Oxbow application. We're really excited about that and the flexibility that it allows you guys. So before we talk more about Oxbow, let's go back and talk about what I said. I made that claim that dichloroprop duplicin technology is a group 4 controlling group 4 resistant weeds. Now this is a pretty busy slide here, so stay with me. If I look at this top picture here, up here on the left, this is wild radish. And wild radish is a weed in Australia that is similar to kochia. It is sort of the bane of their existence out there. And a little fun fact is Australia is the #1 country as far as weed resistance. And Nufarm just happens to be an Australian-based company. So Australia was in quite a pickle with this weed, wild radish. Wild radish has developed group 4 resistance. And what we see here, this is a wild radish that is not group 4 resistant. When you spray one of the wild radish leaf with 2,4-D, it translocates throughout the stem, through the roots, and you have good activity. This is what we want to see, is this chemistry being translocated down through the root and stem. This weed will die. Go over far to the right here. This is a group 4 resistant wild radish. If you spray 2,4-D on one of these leaves, what we see is that the 2,4-D has lost the ability to translocate throughout that stem and down to the roots. It stays localized in that leaf. Why is this a concern? It's a concern because 2,4-D and group 4 resistance is being confirmed as losing the ability to translocate throughout the plant. So this leaf will curl up and die, but this plant is going to be fine and it's going to keep on growing. If we take the same group 4 2,4-D resistant wild radish, and you spray one leaf with our duplicin technology, what you see in this radio imagery is that the duplicin has translocated throughout that leaf, down through the root, shoot, and down into the stem of the plant. This is really exciting because this weed will now die. So this is how duplicin, which is dichloroprop, is a group 4 controlling group 4 resistant weeds. And if you look at the molecules, although they are similar, they are very different here. So I know I talked about kochia, but besides kochia, Oxbow has a wide range of weeds that it will control. We have everything from Russian thistle, lamb's quarters, shepherd's purse, stinkweed, wild buckwheat. We've also submitted for volunteer canola, roundleaf mallow, hemp nettle, storkbill, and annual scalp thistle. It's a pretty wide window of weeds controlled. Now, if you look at this weed control, this is a weird graph here. What it means is 0 is the center and 100% is the outside. So the closer to the outside, the better. The red line is Oxbow, Pixero is the blue, and Octane is the green. And as we go around this chart for each of these weeds, you see that everybody is really tight and pretty similar throughout all different weeds here. The separation mainly happens here on kochia. That's where Oxbow is closest to the outside of the circle and just getting overall a little bit more control over kochia than the other two competitors. Probably my favorite slide in this portfolio is this study here. This was targeting large kochia. So if you look back on that slide that I had a few slides ago that said the labeled rate or the labeled size of kochia, it was 15 centimeters, which is essentially, couple inches. We all know that sometimes stuff happens and we're not spraying kochia inside that labeled rate range. So this is looking at trial targeting large kochia, minimum of 6 inches. So in this study here, all these different dots are data points. You see that octane had a pretty wide spread of performance. This guy right here had a pretty wide spread. The only time that I heard of this product maybe not performing to its best was on large kochia or where water volume was cut. Overall, though, this is still a really good product. Infinity had a really tight data range here, and Oxbow as well, just really tight data range here. But what you'll notice here is Oxbow is at about, what is this, 74%. So even though we're spraying large weeds, we're not getting that full level of control, which is 80%, but it's doing the best it can. So when we're spraying weeds outside that labeled rate range, the larger the weeds go, the more our expectations have to adjust in order to control that too. So what's the symptomology of this active ingredient? So of duplazan, the dichloroprop technology alone, very similar to a group 4, where you'll get the wilting of the growing points happening, that stem will start to twist, you'll get some swelling that happens here, but the weeds stay green. That's because it's a systemic product, so it needs to stay green as it continues to grow for the full activity to happen. This is Oxbow, so when you add in the bromoxynol combination, the two work really nice. That light rate of bromoxynol goes and crisps off the weeds, kind of gets that top growth, and then the bending of the stem, the twisting that you're seeing is the dichloroprop, the duplazan technology. If you're not sure if you have phylloxera resistance, this is what it could look like. This picture here on the right, this is phylloxera and actually 8 ounces of 2,4-D, and this kochia is thriving. Versus the picture on the left, this is the application with Oxbow. So you see that symptomology starting. You see those growing points have wilted. It's starting to twist here, and it's still green. We need to give this weed here a bit more time because full symptomology will develop in 3 weeks. Russian thistle. So this bad boy scares me quite a bit. It's a tougher weed to control. Really good activity on Russian thistle with Oxbow. Canada thistle. So that's not a weed that you'll see on label there that was listed. Showing you guys this Canada thistle is pretty almost camouflaged here. But you see a really good job done by the bromoxynol burning it off. You would just get that top growth only, but it helps knock that Canada thistle down. I was really impressed by how much activity we had on Canada thistle. All right, I'm not sure if this video is going to play here, but we'll give it a chance. So this is a kochia patch. And this is where I would use a high rate of Oxbow here. So you see this is still 14 days after treatment. So some of those kochias are going, those bigger kochia, the dichloroprop still needs to have full activity. But you see how thick that kochia mat was. That's upwards of 75 plants per square foot of kochia. In those instances, I would use a high rate of Oxbow, or I would just use the full 10 gallons of water. From that same field here, 14 days after treatment, this is how the kochia looks. So really strong activity on a very large kochia plant. You see these growing points here are wilted. That stem has already started to twist off. We see these growing points wilted here. Those littler stems are also wilting. Really strong activity happening only 14 days after on a large kochia. And this is a nice progression here. So this was about 7 days after application of Oxbow. 7 days after application, this is pretty common to see. You'll see the burning happening from the bromoxynol hitting the kochia here. The wilting has started to happening. You see some yellowing, a little bit of twisting of the stem. This is 7 days after application. To see full activity, this is a good kill. This is 3 weeks after application. So for full symptomology to see the full activity, it does take 3 weeks. So if you do use this product, keep that in mind when you're going out looking at it, because it is the systemic product. Some strong activity here being seen on lamb's quarters. Another good example of kochia. Then as we wrap up here, the top left here is a picture of brown leaf mallow. We got some more Russian thistle, kochia down here at the bottom. To the right here is cleavers. So you see us doing a really, really bang up job here on cleavers, and that'll be cleavers that are group 2 and 4 resistant. And then this picture on the far right is actually wild buckwheat. This was Jason's trial, and I believe he said it was a 15 whirl wild buckwheat that he saw activity on. So really good activity being seen here with Oxbow. All right. And as we get to the end of the presentation of Oxbow, I'm going to open it up for some Q&A session now. I'm just going to open up the chat and see if there's anything. But if you have any questions, feel free to turn yourself off mute and ask them right now.
How long after application do you typically see symptoms start to show up?
The bromoxynol portion of the symptomology is going to show up quite fast. So you'll see that start to show up in like just a couple of days. For full activities being seen by the dichloroprop or the Duplosan technology takes about 7 days, and then full activity will be seen after about 21 days, 3 weeks. Any comments you want to add to that, Jason?
No, that would be my expectation as well.
Excellent. What other questions do you guys have on Oxbow?
Any issues with water quality, anything like that we need to watch out for?
I do not believe we have any concerns with water quality, with the exception of our general concerns of the water hardness, TDG, pH, etc. Jason, any comments on this one?
No, we haven't discovered anything that stands out. We've had some trials. I think between Ray and I know I've done 5 field scale trials with the product in various different areas, and I think Ray's done a lot more than that. So we have seen it in large field scale trials so far, and nothing has stood out as far as water quality.
Good, thank you.
One last question for Jason. What about them oilers?
Oh boy, are we starting with that? They're on a break now, so I guess we'll have to take a break on that too.
All right. If there's no other questions, I'm gonna let Jason take it over from here. We have something else really exciting that we want to share with you guys here today.
Okay, we wanted to touch base a little bit on the pre-seed burn-off portfolio, or our list of herbicides for the emerged growing weeds. You can go to the next slide. So if you've used our pre-seed burn down products before, you will note that we sell a different group 14 contact active compared to a lot of other companies in Western Canada with the Group 14 burn-offs. We sell an active called pyroflufen ethyl, and basically, you know, we've our acre footprint has really grown in Western Canada. We're getting on to about 4.1 million acres of land as a pre-seed burn-off now. The key point there is you cannot buy pyroflufen alone, and that is basically by design. We've tried with our brands to always have a second mode of action present whenever we've sold pyroflufen, and we think that that strategy is good to help try and save the Group 14 category from developing resistance. So and we think that pyroflufen does have benefits as far as tank mixability, in that it's a little bit slower to act on the weed as a herbicide killer compared to some of our competitors. And so that allows more time for the, you know, for the glyphosate to translocate, or for the MCPA or 2,4-D or bromoxynil to do its work before the pyroflufen starts shutting down those cells. So we were not going to talk about Conquer, which is our burn-off for a head of canola and mustard with a group 6 and 14. Goldwing is a group 4 and 14 for primarily pulses, peas, lentils, chickpeas, and flax. And then Thunderhawk is our pre-seed burn-off with 14, 4, and 2. So there's some residual control there for volunteer flushing canola. And then, but the big one we wanted to talk about is we are renovating Blackhawk, and Blackhawk will now be called Blackhawk EVO. And that all of our production going forward is basically changed over to Blackhawk EVO. So why are we doing this? Again, want to stay with the multiple mode of action strategy. So we now have Group 14 plus 2 different Group 4 actives, 2,4-D, plus the duplazan or the dichloroprop added to Blackhawk EVO. And basically, when we looked at our data over all of our trials, every trial that we did, 25 different locations, we think it's going to be a seamless transition in that, you know, as far as all weeds present, we basically have a very consistent control with Blackhawk EVO. The new packaging will allow us to now, we treat 80 acres a case, 480 acres a drum, or 1,920 acres a tote versus the old 60 acre case rate. So I think that's going to be a little bit more usable for people. But the big factor, and so the big benefit for us in the South is when we looked at our trial data, if you want to go to the next slide there, Ray, as far as kochia goes, that's where we think the benefit of Blackhawk EVO versus the straight Blackhawk. We are seeing that we will stand by kind of a 10% increase in kochia results with the Blackhawk EVO versus the original Blackhawk. You know, in a lot of our trials, we have looked at, you know, we compare straight pyroflufen alone because it is so stringent on coverage, and the straight Group 14 contact category is very, very tough to get consistent results in those carpets. Straight pyroflufen alone, you know, our data shows about 55% control. Same thing, if you use straight dichloroprop, you know, we're up in that, you know, mid 70s to 75% control results alone. And then 2,4-D, you're starting to see, as we're developing a lot more tolerance, you know, there's been no announcements of 2,4-D resistance, and that's primarily because they've never tested it. Most of the time 2,4-D goes down with another active, but there's no question that 2,4-D is developing a lot of tolerance into the market. So 2,4-D alone, you know, is anywhere from on average is around 40% results, but you know, it can stretch out from 10 to 50 or 60. But when you wrap all that together and you put Blackhawk EVO, you know, we're back in, as far as kochia goes, we're in the high 90s for control, both the contact and systemic activity. And just a couple of quick, you know, photos that we've collected. These ones made our presentation out of Saskatchewan, but it's quite visible when you see the Blackhawk EVO versus untreated on the left. Quite substantial. That's quite a heavy kochia population. Seeing some great results on some big flicksweed, that sort of stuff when mixed together. So we've done some trials. We think it's going to be a very smooth transition. Us as reps and in our small plot trials and field scale trials, seeing some great results out of Blackhawk EVO. And before I go to questions, I just wanted to review our 2024 New Farmer Nation grower program. Basically, we went down the grower program road a couple of years ago, and primarily just to offer a bit of a break to our loyal producers that are supporting our portfolio. So basically, step one in the purchase process, you have to buy a minimum 160 acres of either Conquer, Fierce, or Valterra. And we had a huge fall last year with Fierce and Valterra. So anything that you put on last fall or are planning on putting on this spring will basically qualify you. If you've bought one case, you're in. And then basically you purchase the rest of our portfolio, gets you to the purchase level. So all of these products on the right-hand side, the Signal, Fierce, Valterra, any of our portfolio helps to build your purchase level. And then we pay on the products on the left. So basically you can get up to a 12% rebate back if you're over $90,000 purchase on Nufarm product on Nipsit, Blackhawk, Blackhawk EVO, Conquer, Goldenwing, Thunderhawk. And the in-crop portfolio, you can get up to 8% rebate back on Enforcer D, M, Oxbow, Ransack, True Slate, Joust, and Quash are our fungicides. So pretty simple. Once you're in, if you've received the check, you do not need to sign back up in the past. But if you are a new producer that has never had a check, we do require a sign up at nufarm.ca. You can go to New Farmer Nation and sign up there, or have AgroPlus sign up on your behalf. So that was all I had. Any questions on Blackhawk EVO and the transition?
Don't be shy, guys. I know I'm certainly looking forward to seeing Blackhawk Evo in the field this spring. It looks pretty good. I think we're probably going to see a bit more for weeds at burn-off time this year compared to last. I was out walking a few fields yesterday. I noticed there is a lot of flicksweed that has germinated in the last week. So I think we're definitely going to be seeing some of that.
You bet. Yeah, this spring-like conditions here. And it's definitely, it's amazing. I mean, we had a little bit of snow over in the Brooks area. Wasn't a huge amount, but it seems to be trapped at the surface here with some of the frost. And yeah, it's a little wetter than I anticipated it would be. So I do agree with you that it is a bit of a potential for germination of some weeds for sure.
I think our subsoil has still got quite a bit of frost in it here, but that surface layer is definitely thawed out and getting muddy. But we got a lot of water pooling, which is telling me we're still frozen down below at the moment, but that might not last for long.
Correct. Yeah.
Ernie, have you seen any weeds popping out down where you are yet?
I don't know, the winter wheat screen. If it gets cold, that's gonna be a mess.
It might be. I've seen a lot of fall rye and stuff like that is getting quite green at the moment here as well. I guess I'll add too, for you guys that haven't tried Thunderhawk yet, I started recommending that last year for canola stubble from the year before, and that's been an excellent product. I've been very, very happy with that one. I think Nufarm's done a good job on that one. It'll really help control some of your volunteer canola, so that's something to look at as well.
Yeah, I think the important thing with Thunderhawk is, I mean, a lot of people have relied on the group 2, the flurazolam that's in there in the past, and it's just, you know, having that group 14 added to it is just a step up compared to some of the products that folks have been using as well. So you know, having them 3-way mode of action is definitely important.
Any other questions? No, pretty quiet. Okay, so I guess if there's no further questions, that is probably it for this meeting. So thank you all for attending, and yeah, we'll do one of these again here in a couple of weeks, more than likely. So